Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. This is Omar Khalid, but with Newsroom on this very day, that is the 18th of April 2023. Now, the fact remains that we have lots of happenings across the world and in Pakistan as well, and we have chosen some of the stories to discuss during the course of the show. We will begin with India's exploitation of the Pulwama attack. We all know about Satyapal Malik's statements, the former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. While talking to an interviewer, he revealed many things that raise a lot of questions about the Pulwama attack, about India's non-innocence as far as this attack is concerned. We all remember how Pakistan was born as the one responsible for it, and this is also one of the things that has been highlighted during this. The rapidity with which Article 370 and 350 were also applied after that also points to many different questions as to the timing of the Pulwama attack, who was behind it, what happened, and why is Pakistan put on the forefront whenever something happens in India when Pakistan has not been the case or the cause of such incidents. We'll be discussing different aspects of the Pulwama attack and the Indian hegemonic designs towards Pakistan and towards Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This is going to be our first segment. Our second segment concerns climate change, ladies and gentlemen. Climate change that is extremely important for countries such as Pakistan as well. We've seen how floods damaged 1/3 of Pakistan last year, how the people are still reeling under the impact of the floods, how all the fertile lands were destroyed, how people lost their livelihoods as well as a result of that. How has climate change affected agriculture? This is going to be our second segment, and we'll be discussing different aspects of what needs to be done now in order to be more ready in case something happens in the future as well. This is our second segment. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the landslide that has occurred in the northern parts of Pakistan near the Torkham border, and how the people who have perished as a result of that. Will be informing you about the latest details as far as that is concerned. Let's begin with our first segment that concerns the Pulwama attack that happened way back in 2019. The happenings way back then, the pointing towards Pakistan by Mr. Narendra Modi at that very time, the fact that no probable proof has been given to Pakistan today, despite Pakistan asking it many a times, and of course the explosive interview by Satyapal Malik to an Indian publication highlighting many of the question marks around that very incident. More in the following report.
In Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Indian troops have made difficult for the Kashmiri people, and human rights are violated there on daily basis. After the Indian unilateral actions on 5th of August 2019, situation in the occupied valley has become extremely dire, where the basic rights of Kashmiris have been usurped. In order to deflect attention from its draconian measures in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Pulwama false flag operation was conducted by BJP to create major Pak-India standoff. The latest revelations made by Satyapal Malik, the former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, regarding the Pulwama attack in 2019 had once again vindicated Pakistan's stance. In an interview with Indian publication, Satyapal Malik, who was governor during the Pulwama attack and the scraping of Article 370 in August that year, said Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hid key facts from the public about the incident. In a statement, Foreign Office has emphasized that Satyapal Malik's disclosures demonstrates how the Indian leadership has habitually used the buggery of terrorism from Pakistan to advance its sham victimhood narrative and the Hindutva agenda clearly for domestic political gains. International community has to take cognizance of the latest revelations and see through India's propaganda campaign against Pakistan driven by selfish political considerations.
Naveed Aman Khan, who is a renowned analyst, joins us in the studio to discuss more on this very important topic. Naveed Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Naveed Saab, whether it be the Foreign Office, whether it be our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab, they have both said that the revelations by the former government of the Indian held Jammu and Kashmir make Pakistan vindicate Pakistan of the cause being behind the Pulwama attack. How do you feel is the international response coming forward after this interview of Satyapal Malik?
It is a wonderful development regarding Pulwama incident. When
as far as Pakistan's stance is concerned, of course.
As far as Pakistan's stance is concerned, because it has revealed the truth, and it has revealed that Pakistan is innocent and was innocent at the time of Pulwama incident. Whenever there is anything very bad happening in or happen in India without going to the investigations or details abruptly blames Pakistan. which is their routine habit. It has become their routine, which is very wrong, because once you blame, the entire world starts acknowledging or believing. It works. Such propaganda works. But now, after 3-4 years, since 2019 to now, 4 years have gone, but now the truth has come out.
But will people understand that this is the truth? Will people understand the reality of the situation? Will people also understand that Pakistan was never the cause of the Pulwama attack?
Definitely, the people now understand. By then, the people also understood that Pakistan has never been involved in any sort of terrorism in any part of the world, or especially in India. Pakistan has never been the part of any, whether it be Kolkata incident or it is the Pulwama incident. Pakistan has nothing to do with such things. As far as the Pulwama incident is concerned, India has been brutally dealing the Kashmiris, or massacre is there, the killings, the rapes, the atrocities, everything very bad is happening in Indian occupied Kashmir. And if it is, if there is any retaliation, it might be from the Kashmiris themselves, not by the Pakistanis.
But of course, even the bomber who was behind the Pulwama attack was of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir origin.
Definitely.
That and the fact that many of the reports say that the truck that was loaded with the explosives was seen roaming around the valley for quite some days before the incident happened. Why did they not do anything at that time?
And definitely, if something has happened, then the Indian forces were there. The Indian intelligence raw has been very vigilantly working in occupied Kashmir. What they have been doing then, if such explosive material reached the place of incident, what they have been doing, it has exposed their vigilance, their proficiency, their expertise,
or lack thereof,
and lack of.
Of course, I'll also like to refer, quote unquote, to what our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said in a statement regarding the reaction to this statement by Satyapal Malik, this interview that he gave. He has cautioned that India's dangerous brinkmanship could have led to disastrous consequences for the region. Do you feel that India is a responsible nuclear state?
Definitely, it will affect the region. The irresponsible behavior and irresponsible statements of India may jolt the peace of the region, because both of the countries, Pakistan and India, both of the countries are the nuclear states, and both needs to be very, very responsible. And unfortunately, India believes in the politics and policy of hatred and division and the prejudice. They provoke such behavior whenever they go for the elections. They start blaming Pakistan in any case or the other. It is a part of their policy, in particular the policy of BJP. And I would say that Modi is Indian Imran Khan, and Imran Khan is Pakistani Modi. So the both of the politicians, they have the same behavior.
The fact remains that Narendra Modi is still as acidic in his remarks as far as the region, especially when Pakistan is concerned. Let's go back in time. Let's go back to 2019. February 14, the blast kills 44 Indian soldiers. 15th, Modi vows a strong response to Pulwama. Quote unquote, he says the blood of the people is boiling and the forces behind the act of terrorism will definitely be punished. The same day, India withdraws the most favored nation status that it had given to Pakistan, and Pakistan has sought out actionable evidence as far as that is concerned of any involvement whatsoever, and none was given, and to date no evidence has been given to date. And of course, then Pakistan called back the High Commissioner in India on the 18th. India began the arguments in the Yadav case before the International Criminal Court, if you remember, International Court of Justice. 20th, United Nations offered help in diffusing tensions. 21st, the United Nations chief calls for meaningful arrangements. And then on the 26th of February, Indian aircraft violates the LOC, and we know what happened afterwards, and we know the Abhinandan incident as well. If we look back in time and look back at the present, do you feel that India's attitude as far as a responsible country, especially because I have to reiterate again and again, it is a nuclear state just like Pakistan is. The way Pakistan showed responsibility when Indian aircrafts attacked Pakistan, do you feel India still acts responsibly? Do you feel it I mean, things can go really haywire in case these Indian statements or such attacks happen in the future?
No, I don't think that India has always been behaving in like a responsible state or even a responsible atomic state. India definitely believes in the philosophy of Hindutva. Because of this philosophy of politics, they go aggressively against all the nations living in India, and that is and because of this, the insurgencies are in many parts of India, and because of those insurgencies, India faces such retaliation from those nations and the militants or the freedom fighters. Either they are in Kashmir or in different parts of India. But it doesn't mean that Pakistan has anything to do with those insurgencies or...
There are so many insurgencies happening all across India. It's just not in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. There are so many others, and we can count some of them. I mean, let's look at the Khalistan movement that is going on.
And in Indian occupied Kashmir, they are fighting for their right of self-determination, and that is their indigenous movement. Pakistan, definitely. Pakistan supports the Indian Kashmiris politically, diplomatically or morally. Pakistan extends their support, and Pakistan believes that Pakistan has India is a part of India is an integral part of Pakistan. It is the Pakistani claim that Pakistan extends. But it doesn't mean that Pakistan intervenes in the political matters of Kashmir or in the political matters of India. It doesn't mean.
But you know, the fact remains that Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir remains a disputed region as per different resolutions that have been put in the United Nations, placed in the United Nations, accepted by the United Nations General Assembly since 1948. Let's also go now to the explosive interview by Satyapal Malik, the former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. He talked to Karan Thapar in The Wire, and he said that he was told to hush up things after this attack by not only the Prime Minister but also other members of his cabinet. Is this a responsible attitude from any head of state following an incident such as that in Pulwama?
No, I don't think. Unfortunately, Modi, since he has joined his office of premiership and he is now completing his second tenure, but he has throughout been very irresponsible as far as his politics within the region is concerned, or even his dealing with the international community or with America. Even once he was not allowed to enter America because of his behavior.
And the same country had to allow him once he became Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, this is the dilemma of international politics. Once they reject and the other time they accept the same person. So the behavior of Modi may shatter the peace of the region. If India doesn't learn any lesson from his behavior or the behavior of or policy of the BJP or their politicians, the peace may be the dream of the region.
All right. Well, Pakistan always strives for peace. Pakistan has always given an olive branch to India, but of course India has never reciprocated. This is going on since quite some years. Let's come back to the interview of Satyapal Malik to The Wire to Karan Thapar. He said the Pulwama episode was a result of India's quote-unquote incompetence, particularly of the Home Ministry. He also gave details as to how the CRPF had asked for an aircraft to transport its personnel, but it was denied the provision of the aircraft to for that. Do you feel that when Ajit Doval or Narendra Modi asked the former governor to hush up things and do not talk about it, what kind of lessons do you see if you look back in 2019 and now that the interview comes of Satyapal Malik? What kind of inference do you take out, results do you take out from that interview as far as our not so friendly neighbor India is concerned?
One thing is very positive in this interview, that the inner self of Satyapal Malik forced him to tell the truth. And though after 4 years, but he told the truth, and the truth is the victory of Pakistan. But one thing is very important. If Pakistan is very patient, very humble, peace lover, harmony lover, it doesn't mean that Pakistan is a weak country. It's the strength of Pakistan, it's not the weakness of Pakistan. And this strength should be enhanced on the international level, either in the United Nations or to the other political or diplomatic forums. Pakistan need to go for very, very positive lobbying in those forums.
But that Pakistan has been doing since quite some time. But India has always been trying to not only malign Pakistan, but destabilize Pakistan internally, externally, on social media, through disinformation campaigns. We all know about the EU Disinfo Lab report and so on and so forth. I mean, I can go on and on about how India is trying to malign Pakistan, but how Pakistan is trying to mend ways and trying to, ask for to India to talk about all the thorny issues, including that of an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but they don't want to come on the deciding table.
Khalid, the reason is this, that India is the only country in the world who has not acknowledged Pakistan from the core of its heart.
That is the main essence, I think.
The thing which is the main reason. But India will have to realize the reality. Pakistan has been now a strong country, a country who got independence 75 years back. If India doesn't acknowledge it, it doesn't mean that the reality is not there. Pakistan is a reality now. Both of the countries are the neighbors. Now for the peace, for the prosperity of the region, for the prosperity of almost the 2 billion people of the entire region, India will have to realize this reality and acknowledge this reality for the better good of tomorrow.
We've also seen the blatant attack on politician Atiq Ahmed and brother Ashraf Ahmed, who were shot dead on live TV, and it was all shown all over India. Of course, we don't show it because of the violence that was shown in that. Now, do you feel that all of this incident and others in the region was kind of deliberate maneuvering by India to sideline all the backlash that it had been receiving because of the interview of Satyapal Malik?
Definitely, this is one of the most important reasons. And India has become a very polarized society in the country. The hatredness is all over, is spoiling the image of India all over. India will have to review its behavior, either within the Hinduisms or with the other nations.
And it has to stop blaming Pakistan for everything that happens in its country. Pakistan is not responsible for what happens in India, in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It is their local leaders, their local people that are revolting against all the atrocity, the brutalities that the Indian forces and the Indian government have been perpetrating since decades, and it has only aggravated in the last few years.
India has occupied Kashmir. Kashmir is not the part of India. That is
but India called it
yes, they claim it, but the Kashmiris they disclaim it, and they don't believe that they are the part of India, and they are struggling for their independence, for their vote of self determination. That is why they have picked up the weapon against the Indian forces, because the Indian forces are not acknowledging their liberty.
Naveed Saab, the fact remains that Satyapal Malik's interview, a former governor of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, giving an interview to an Indian journalist, paves the way for a lot of other people that will come out with the truth. And I hope that people understand that Pakistan has not been the root cause of all the evil in India. It is India that has been the root cause of all the evil in its country, and they need to mend their ways in order to better themselves. Thank you so very much, Naveed, Aman Khan Saab, to have joined us. That, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our first segment concerning the Pulwama attack, the explosive interview by Satyapal Malik, the former governor of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, regarding what happened at that time, and of course Narendra Modi's attitude towards that he said is partly responsible for what happened and the aftermath as well. Our second segment concerns climate change, ladies and gentlemen, and the effect on the agricultural sector in our country and in other countries as well. We've seen the devastating floods that have wreaked havoc in Pakistan last year in 2022, and people are still reeling from the effects of it because they've lost their agricultural lands, their agricultural produce, their houses as well, and some of the lands are still underwater. What needs to be done now? We would like to refer to a UN event that was organized by the FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization in New York, where Ambassador Munir Akram set out some important took out some important statements and addressed this very issue. To talk about that, we've been joined by Ahmed Rafay Alam. He's an environmental lawyer. Rafay, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you in our shows. Rafay, let me begin with Munir Akram Saab. In his, of course, address to the UN event that was organized by the Food and Agriculture Organization, he says, and I quote, "Climate change has adversely affected the agriculture production, turning it into from a food self-sufficient area into a deficient one." And he was, of course, referring to Pakistan. In your point of view, under the current circumstances, with floods having affected Pakistan last year, how can Pakistan address climate-related food insecurity, and how should it prepare itself?
Well, thank you, first of all, Omar, for inviting me to speak. I might add that right now, because of the rains that took place in Pakistan in March and earlier this month, 5 to 6% of the wheat crop in Punjab is known to be impacted, a value of approximately 23 billion rupees. Last year, the cotton crop in Sindh was devastated by the floods. And, you know, the mango production, because of the heat wave last year before the flooding, the March-April heat wave last year destroyed about 50% of the mango production of Pakistan. Now, we've had a heat wave in the last 10 days here in Pakistan as well. And as a result, I might point out that the river Swat has been surging and flooding. The Bahrain Kalam road has been flooded, and the Bahrain Bazaar has been flooded, so much so that the Pakistan Army and the NHA had to be deployed to be able to, protect people and installations. This is an ongoing, and it will continue to be an ongoing devastation. Climate change is devastation. We must understand this. And if you thought last year was hot, this year is the coolest summer for the rest of our lives. Ambassador Munir Akram is absolutely right. Pakistan's food production has been impacted by heat waves and erratic rainfalls, and this will continue to occur until and unless large countries and large economies commit to greenhouse gas reduction, for phasing out fossil fuels by 2050, so that we can try and keep global temperatures to under 1.5 degrees centigrade compared to pre-industrial levels.
There at COP27. Now, COP27 is one of the moots that where all the countries from the important countries from the world make the necessary pledges in order to move forward and to make to stop or to pause climate change at the earliest. As a person who was there, who also represented Pakistan, who also listened to many of the speeches, do you feel the people there were sincere in their pledges? And do you feel those pledges will be translated into action, or is there a question mark there?
Now, I know being part of the Pakistani delegation, I'm very proud of the work the Pakistani delegation did in negotiating for what's known as a loss and damage facility. And I'm glad you and I have been speaking about this as well. Your show has been highlighting climate crisis issues for several months now, and I want to appreciate that. But the important thing to note about the Conference of Parties is that their primary focus should be and is on the reduction of greenhouse gases and the phasing out of fossil fuel. And the one thing that was not achieved in COP27 was sufficient statements by large countries and economies to phase out or phase down fossil fuels. That was lacking. And it's because these promises of phasing out or phasing down fossil fuels have not been met that countries like Pakistan are facing the brunt of climate change beyond adaptation. Last year's floods, which were primarily caused by greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. We know this now. The science says that 75% of the intensity of the rainfall last year was because of increased temperatures, mostly because of industrial countries and historical emissions. We know that this is their fault. And because they aren't committing to reducing greenhouse gases, countries like Pakistan are facing the brunt of this. And we need now facilities like loss and damage. So we must also recognize that the loss and damage fund at some level also signifies a failure on behalf of the global north to meet their commitments on climate change.
Rafay, why are the governments not serious about decarbonization?
Where should I start, Omar? You know, we live in a world where the world economy allows for unaccountable extraction and exploitation of natural resources and human labor. We live in a world where we look at billionaires who accumulate wealth and create poverty and somehow treat them as profits that should be followed. There is all sorts of things that I could start off on, but really it's the global economic system and global consumerism and colonialism and patriarchy that's driving the fossil fuel industry and the climate crisis. And we need to address each one of these to be able to have a hope to save the future of the planet and of human civilization.
All right, now let's, before we come to Pakistan, I'd like to also understand, because you were part of COP27, COP28 is going to happen in Dubai. One of the important things that will be included in this conference is going to be the first global stocktake from the Paris Climate Agreement. Do you feel that till then there will be some reality that would have crept through the members across the world who are still not decarbonizing, who are still using fossil fuels, and who are still contributing to the greenhouse effect and climate change? Do you feel Pakistan can achieve something new in COP28 as well, just like we did in COP27?
Well, I hope the stocktake has the impact that it's supposed to have. The United Nations and other bodies continually release information and data about global warming, which is scary many times. And I hope, one must remain an optimist, the momentum of last year can be maintained. But I might also point out that by the time COP28 rolls around in November of this year, there will have been a general election in Pakistan and a change in government. So I don't know whether the present members of the Ministry of Climate Change, who were so successful in negotiating in COP27, will still be part of the team going forward.
COP is one of the forum where tangible results can be achieved as far as tackling climate change is concerned.
Most certainly, that is the big show in town. That is the place where the countries of the world come together and negotiate and can be persuaded to add to their commitments to phase out fossil fuels, add to their commitments of reverting back to their political constituencies and swallowing the bitter pill and changing the way their economies are functioning. These are tall orders, Omar, at the end of the day. Countries like the United States, countries or groups of countries like the European Union, especially the European Union that's now beset with this war in Ukraine that has caused energy disruptions. We now find countries of the European Union that had otherwise made very good commitments on phasing out fossil fuels, returning to fossil fuel-based energy on account of the Ukraine conflict and a lack of energy coming from Russia. So these are very difficult times and exacerbated by all sorts of other security issues. But once again, the climate crisis is the big elephant in the room that no one should ignore, and it should be the primary driver of all of our discussions.
All right. Rafay, I'd like to refer you to the visit of Professor Jean-Paul Van Ypersel, who is a former Vice Chair of the UN's IPCC and Belgium's picked to lead the Geneva-based panel. This year he was in Pakistan last month. He noted, and I'd like to quote, that the melting of the glaciers in the Himalayan region affects the water needs of billions in this region, that is South Asia. In your point of view, climate change, melting of glaciers, how is this affecting the water needs of the people in this region? Positively, negatively, how are they being affected? Do you feel they are getting more water? Do you feel they should not get that much water? What's your take?
Omar, the glaciers of the Hindu Kush, Karakoram and Himalayan mountain ranges feed about 16 transboundary rivers that stretch into India, into Pakistan, into Afghanistan, into Bangladesh, into China, into Cambodia, into Thailand, and feed billions of people. This is the third largest collection of fresh water on the face of the earth. And the ICIMOD organization, which is a SARC-based organization headquartered in Kathmandu, published its glacier report in 2018, the most recent and most comprehensive assessment of how climate change will impact these glaciers. And according to ICIMOD, at 1.5 degrees of global warming, about 35% of the water mass of these glaciers will be lost. And at 2 degrees of global warming, as much as 65% or 2/3 of the water mass of these glaciers will be lost. Now, I cannot begin to stress the level of devastation this will be. because as those glaciers melt, there will be increased flooding, as we are seeing in Swat. For example, the Swat River flooding right now is because of the heat wave that's melting glaciers. And glaciers aren't necessarily all clean water, they come with debris and rock. So there's going to be, and now there are all sorts of organizations that are telling us that unless we can capture or contain global warming, these mountain ranges will lose their glaciers within this century. So we will have exacerbated flooding, and then we will not have any glacial water that feeds 16 transboundary rivers and the agricultural system of at least a dozen countries and over 3 billion people.
Well, that is, not only startling news, but very worrisome news for our future generations as well. We are for the moment drinking water and enjoying to some extent the liberties of a democratic country with the different, access to water and food. You're drinking your tea right now also. I can see that after iftar. But the fact remains, Rafay, that maybe our grandchildren won't be able to have that much accessibility to clean water, that much accessibility to their necessities of life that we are currently having. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, has said that the climate time bomb is ticking. Do you feel the world is unable to reach the climate goals that are meant to be reached by 2030? Do you feel anything could be achieved? Do you think that will not be achieved? What are you optimistic, cautiously optimistic, pessimistic?
The truth is that we no longer live in the planet that we were born on. The planet is changing. It might not be able to sustain the balance that has maintained ecological balance and formed the basis of agriculture that's formed that has been able to sustain civilization. I'm wistful because the technologies and the practices to reduce greenhouse gases and to maintain a safe and a safe temperature exist on Earth today. What is frightening is that political leaders around the world are not taking these threats seriously enough. They have been fed lies, and I might say lies, by the fossil fuel industry, stating all the way back from the 1970s. There has been all sorts of, greenwashing and lying about how bad the climate crisis is. And I'm therefore wistful because the solutions are there, but politicians are being lied to and they're not taking this seriously enough. The solutions are there.
Money is involved, and those who are getting all that money do not want the money to be reduced in any way whatsoever. So the fossil fuels continue, the carbonization continues, the industries continue with no afterthought on what will happen to the future generations of these very industrialists who are reaping in the billions and the billions of US dollars. Do they not understand the future that they are putting the world in?
I wish they did, because there is money, Omar, there is. There are billions of dollars being poured into a conflict in Ukraine. In 2020, during the pandemic, we saw the largest movement of capital in the history of the world with all of these bailouts governments were giving to their economies. We saw billions and trillions of dollars poured into a conflict in Afghanistan next door in the name of freedom. And just a few years ago, when the Notre Dame church burnt in Paris, France, nearly $1 billion of grants were donated from around the world. And last year, when 30 million of our fellow Pakistanis were homeless on account of a flood that was caused by the global north, and when the United Nations asked for a $400 million flood appeal, not $150 million were released by global countries. And instead, what does Pakistan get? Pakistan gets loans.
This is the hypocrisy, should I call it, or should I say, the very strange attitude that the world has vis-a-vis the realities of countries such as Pakistan and the realities that they want to put themselves into. They need to come out of their shells and need to understand what the reality of the world that is changing is. Let's come to Pakistan, Rafay. Understand a little bit about Pakistani's agriculture that has been destroyed to a large extent because of these floods. Do you feel Pakistan can incorporate climate smart agriculture to mitigate these losses if in case of any future tragedy of this kind?
Indeed, we should be looking at climate smart agriculture. We should be looking at ways that our wheat crop should be resistant to more heat, to more moisture, and other things like this. This is where technology and investments in technology should be focused. However, these initiatives, all water control and agriculture, at the end of the day, are the responsibility of the provinces of Pakistan. We have a federal ministry of climate change, which has made many commitments on the international level. But when it comes to the actual adaptation governance itself, those are the responsibilities of the provinces and the provincial governments. And where we're lacking in Pakistan is all four provinces need to have their own climate governance agendas. So far, KPK and Sindh have climate policies, but the breadbasket, the big province, Punjab, still hasn't got its head around how it's going to think about climate change. We need, at a sub-national level, political commitment to climate adaptation. Because, as I've told you, the future is very stark and very scary. And we have to stop giving, for example, subsidies to the automobile industry or to the real estate sector and giving packages like this. We need to start focusing our governance or building overpasses and underpasses or spending money importing cars. And we have to stop doing this and focus our political attention on climate and climate smart investments that can help us adapt to the future.
Rafay, we also see the air pollution that happens, especially in the big cities like Lahore, like Karachi. We've seen the waste and how it's not properly managed, and in these two cities as well, that cause a lot of issues. We see the burning of crops that causes the air pollution in India, and that it comes to Pakistan, where our farmers also to some extent do the same. Isn't it a collective responsibility not only of the politicians but also of the of citizens of Pakistan like yourself, like myself, to be cognizant of what we are doing, whether we pollute the air through our cars, whether we pollute the air through our motorbikes and scooters that do not have the necessary equipment to and they, of course, they produce all the pollutants as we speak. We see that every day, don't we, Rafay? The fact remains that it is also somehow, somewhere, an individual responsibility.
Omar, when it comes to air pollution, I'll have to differ with you. It's not really a personal or an individual responsibility. I know all of us are automobile dependent, but the fuel available in Pakistan is hardly Euro 2. Our refineries don't know how to hydrocrack and produce Euro 4 or Euro 6 standard fuels that can dramatically reduce air pollution. So that's beyond individual action. That's actually the refineries, and our petroleum policy needs to be able to address that. When it comes to air pollution, we have in Pakistan been experiencing since 2016 extremely bad air pollution events every single winter. And so far, we've gone through one election cycle in 2018, and we're about to go through another election cycle this year. And what we don't see is our politicians taking this issue seriously. At some level, I fear that the air pollution problems in Pakistan are also an example of a political failure, because by this time, everyone knows how bad the air pollution is, and this really should be an election issue going into the election year this summer.
Rafay, I understand that, we are on the urban level talk a lot about this. The discussion basically is sustained towards all the big cities, and experts like yourself talk to anchors like myself, and we talk about it. Our viewers listen to it. Don't you feel we need to dissipate this or disseminate this information on a wider level to the rural areas of Pakistan? Don't you feel the communication on the climate change and the effects of climate change need to be understood by all and sundry, including the small farmer that works in a small remote area in Sindh or in Balochistan or even in South Punjab?
I wish that was the case. We should have a much wider. Certainly, we should be disseminating this. But at the same time, I feel that most farmers are very, very aware of what the climate situation is. They'll know that it's getting hotter, or that the water is less available, or that the flooding is impacting their crops. And the thing is, we still lack a discourse on climate change. And maybe it isn't awareness what we need. What we need is some sort of coherent way of expressing our desires about climate change. Because in Pakistan, politicians build hospitals because that's what people ask for. Politicians help build roads because that's what people ask for. Politicians build schools because that's what people ask for. We have an army because people want security. People need to be able to vocalize their desires on climate justice and climate security. And I'm sure our system will deliver.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, Rafay, Alam, to have joined us and to have talked to us with such candidly about Pakistan climate change and its effect on agriculture. And of course, we went much beyond that. We talked about the different effects of climate change and what needs to be done. A lot of important needs to be done. A lot of collective wisdom needs to be put into action. Our last story concerns the huge landslide in northwest Pakistan. It has killed at least 3 people, wounded several others, and buried nearly 24 vehicles. Now, this landslide has happened near the area of Torkham on Tuesday. This is a border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We all know about this because a lot of to and fro goes on through this area. Police officials have told that dozens of firefighters and rescuers were trying to save truck drivers and people hit by the landslide. They say that the landslide was triggered by lightning, and amid all of this rain as well, a truck caught fire when the lightning hit it, and that is how the casualties happened. We wish all of those who have perished or who have lost their loved ones all the very best. Our deepest condolences to them, and let's hope that, we were just talking of climate change. We need to have policies, have implementation of all climate change related issues, and put them into action so that we can call ourselves a climate resilient country. That is where I will end today's program. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.